Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Reads Podcast, the show where I talk about books and only books and everything book related. And today I am here with Miss Louise Harris. Louise is has owned last research and editing, but before that, she worked in the journalism field after graduating from University of Maryland College of Journalism in 1989. And she has written and edited blogs, web content, press releases, newsletters, SEO content, and manuscripts for both fiction and nonfiction, as well as writes for online and print publications. Her work has appeared in numerous print and online publications. She's also interned with a TV station and wrote for a radio wire service. In 2006, she published her first fiction novel, The 1776 Scroll, followed by her second novel, The 1777 Inn, which was published in 2010. And in 2007, she actually won the Editor's Choice Award for Poetry after her book of 2007 Best Poets by Poetry.com. Her poetry and poems have been featured in BA PWG Sink or Swim: How Overcoming Obstacles Makes life worthwhile, published in 2016. So today she's here to share a little bit more about her writing journey, as well as share a little bit about her journey as a published author. So, Louise, thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to hearing your story and really open to having a good conversation. So, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Noah. Happy to be here.
So, share with me a little bit about how you got into writing books and tell me a little bit more about your background.
Okay, so as everyone heard, I started with journalism because I went to the University of Maryland College of Journalism. But before that, I always knew that I wanted to be a writer, and journalism was the writing field that I chose. But I I started telling stories about my stuffed animals when I was a kid, and I got my first poem published in when I was 12, and I got paid for that. So that made me the first time published author at age 12. I so I also in high school I was on the school newspaper, and I always my I went into romance novels because my grandmother would be sitting on the beach in her chair, and she would be so happy reading these romance novels. So I wanted to do something that would make people happy. So that's why I chose romance novels. And so that's pretty much how I got to where I am now.
So you have a background in journalism and you've worked at different companies and you've had different blogs and stuff be published and be recognized. How does it feel to have your work publicized to a wider audience and have that recognition of seeing how well of a writer you are?
I it does make me joyous to see my byline. And I had the first byline, uh, when I was working for publication. But it's even better when I can do something that somebody else didn't tell me to do, that I decided to do myself, which are my novels. And so I love seeing my name on the covers of all my books, and even the ones where I co-authored or I ghost authored, and those where I'm just on the back of the book, I'm still on there. So it's very satisfying, and it makes me feel like I'm accomplishing something. So that's
How did that experience in being in journalism help you as a writer going forward?
well, I think what it did was it taught me how to write short. People do not want these really long books anymore. They want to be able to read it in a couple of days, and I actually, a lot of my readers tell me that they appreciate my novels because they're short enough that they can get through it in a couple of days, or a long plane ride. They could read my novels. And so I definitely attribute that to my journalism background. The other thing is I tend to write more dialogue and less description because in journalism you're always quoting people. So I don't like reading books that have pages and pages and pages of description, and I definitely don't like writing them. So I will, I have description in there, but I don't have a lot. And I think that's because I write like a journalist in my novels as well. So
Do you remember the first article or blog post that you wrote that gained a lot of traction and gained a lot of public view from audiences?
I don't, but it was probably about the environment because that's where my background is. I wrote for a lot of environmental newsletters, and when I was doing my first foray into online publishing, I was still writing environmental blogs. So so it's probably was about um, the it was probably about recycling or something like that. But I know I have written about climate change, and I also write every year, you know, on Earth Day. I like to write a blog about the myths of environment. So it's because I actually like the environment. I mean, writing about the environment too. So, but
When you were a journalist writer, were there any stories or any topics that you were given that you particularly had trouble writing about? And it can stem from either you just didn't really want to, you weren't interested in it, you didn't have a lot of prior knowledge in it, or that you just, it was something that you found really difficult to write. Did you ever experience that?
yes, different ways. One of the ones that I had difficulty writing, not because I didn't enjoy it, was about politics. I was in college and I had to cover the election with Dan Quayle against somebody else. And everybody was so, there was always one side against the other side. And it was very, very tense. And I didn't like having that kind of tension when I was writing it. Also, when I was interning in the TV station, it was also an election year, and the that summer, two editors that I was under, the interns were under the assignment editors, and two of them were fired because they didn't get the politics correct. So I wasn't one for a lot of writing that really dealt with conflict. I didn't like writing that kind of material. But the things that were really hard to write were actually about insurance or finance because they have such regulation that you can't just write anything. So it always had to be approved by somebody, and I'm not one to wait. I just want to get my work done, and you know, but I always had to wait, and I didn't like that either. So those were my two issues. But I actually like politics. I did when I went to Maryland. Uh, I studied journalism, but my minor was in government, so I took a lot of government classes. So I do actually like covering government. I just didn't like the tension and the oh, you can get fired over this.
Do you think that's what makes a lot of what makes writing hard is the consequences of the topic that is being wrote about and talked about? Do you think some authors are scared to share their full opinion
I
due to
think
the
so.
fact that most of them can receive the backlash from?
I think that's definitely the case today. It probably was not as prominent when I was starting out, but today, where you just turn on your Facebook or LinkedIn and there's always somebody complaining about something that you're writing, that I think has turned people off from writing something and not protecting themselves because we have freedoms in this country that many other countries don't have. Even the democratic countries don't have the same freedoms we do. And so, but yet writers are still afraid to say their opinion, even because of the backlash. So I do think that's happening today more than it should.
So talk to me a little bit more about your books and share with me a little bit about what you write about today.
Okay, so they're all the 1776 something series. And they're all, as I said, they're all romantic, romance and suspense. The first one, 1776 Scroll of Secrets, uh, is actually romantic fantasy because I was influenced by Harry Potter. And when I wrote it, it was between Harry Potter books 6 and Harry Potter book 7. So there was a lot of speculation about what was going to happen in book 7. But I took the next question. I said, well, okay, he's 17 years old. He defeats Voldemort. What happens to his life then? What's his destiny then? And so my character, she is coming off it starts with her coming off a big win and saving the world, but I never actually talk about what the her saving the world is. I kind of just it's just briefly over it. And then she gets kidnapped, but the whole journey is her trying to find what she's going to do with her life because she's already had her destiny at 18. And that's the only one where I delve into like witches and wizards, although my kid books are also witches and wizards. All the other ones are just regular people. But book number, and so when I was writing book number 1, I had already started book number 2, 1776 Bed and Breakfast. But that book, I kept getting stuck. So I would write to chapter 10 and then I would stop and then I would get stuck again and I wouldn't know how to go to the next chapter. So when I finished the book about Scroll of Secrets, that inspired me to finish Bed and Breakfast. And I finally figured out how to make the characters work so I wouldn't get stuck. So so technically book number 2 is really my book number 1, but I didn't finish it. I finished Scroll first. So so book number 3, I wanted to connect to 1 and 2 so that it would be a cohesive series. So book number 3 has characters from Scroll and characters from Bed and Breakfast. And then so that one is 1776 Musket. And then my last one is 1776 Soldier. And that's the first book where I actually tried to go back and forth. I start in present day and then I go back to the past, 1776. And so it's a back and forth. And each one of the books, they have some kind of crime that has to be solved. So the first one's a kidnapping. The second one is a theft and 2 fires and sabotage. And the third one is a bombing at the university. And the fourth one is about 2 murders, one in 1776 that's connected to a murder in 2023. I'm currently working on my 5th in the 1776 series, where it's going to be about the 250th anniversary of, and so I'm really pushing myself to get it out for July 4th. And so that is what I'm doing now. So, and that's going to be 1776 Retreat. It's going to be about a writer's retreat, and embezzlement is going to be the crime in that one. But it's also about the anniversary.
So when you're going into the writing process, do you tend to write a lot at one time? Do you kind of have to do a lot of research about these topics? And tell me a little bit more about what your writing process is like.
Well, I'm one of the few writers who actually use a pen and paper as opposed to a computer. So when I'm writing it, I'm usually on my patio and I'll be writing with, as I said, I'll be writing in a notebook. And then after I've written it in the notebook, then I'll put it on the computer. And the one reason I do that is because when I'm typing into the computer, I'll see things that are awkward. And it's kind of like my first edit is when I'm typing it into the computer. But I also feel like my creativity comes when I'm away from the computer. So I'm more open to what's going to happen. Now, the question about research, I actually don't do a whole lot of research. One of the reasons I write in present day as opposed to 1776 is so that I don't have to do the research about that era. so, um, I do a lot of it is my imagination and what I think would work. And I'm because I was an editor for so long, I know how things are supposed to flow. So that has never really been an issue for me. Um, so I just really kind of let it come, creativity come, and then I work on it after that.
What's been the overall reception that you have received from the public with the new series that you've come out with the 1776 series?
Most of my readers just love my writing. I've had on Amazon the I had one person talk about my 1776 bed and breakfast in a negative way. That was like the only review that I have ever gotten that's been negative. And and I kind of think it might have been a bot, but because it was from England and I don't remember selling any. I mean, I know it's on Amazon, so they could have bought it anyway from Amazon, but I don't I don't actively sell to people in England. So I think it might have been bought, but I don't really know. And that was the only one. But it brings my review numbers down. So I have this really bad review, but then I have all these other ones that are 5 stars. And so it looks like it's a 3.5 stars when it really isn't. But anyway, that's just the fun thing about algorithms. And but most of the people who I've talked to directly at events, they've said that they really enjoy reading my books and that they're really easy to read and that they can get through them really quickly. So, and my grandmother, who was always my first critic, she said I was very talented and she just loved my books before she died. So
Do you think, with you being an author and having more creative control and freedom, do you think you had more control and more direction and being able to share a lot more about what you were passionate about compared to when you were writing blogs and writing
no, I
articles
don't
when you
think
did
so.
journalism?
I mean, it's fiction versus nonfiction, but I was very I had a lot of leeway in what I wrote on the blogs or what I wrote on the environmental newsletters. I was able to choose the stories. So I don't think that my fiction has given me an outlet that I didn't have before. I think it was just that one was nonfiction and one I had to tell the truth, and then one was I could come up with anything, even if it doesn't work in physics, which my husband is an engineer and he's constantly telling me that, well, this isn't physics and this isn't going to work. And I'm like, I don't care because it's fiction. It doesn't matter if it works or not. So, but and I actually worked with another engineer and I was trying to explain to him that because he wanted to make everything exact. And I was like, it's fiction. It doesn't have to be exact. You can get away with not having things exact. But anyway, so I think I had leeway. It was just a different kind of leeway. So I always wrote things I enjoyed.
So as a writer, I know everyone has that thing of being able to, they can become a writer themselves, but maybe people don't know kind of where to begin or know the steps into becoming a writer. What three tips would you give to someone if they are wanting to become a successful writer?
The first thing I would tell them is not to be don't get overwhelmed, because I hear an awful lot of people who want to write a book, but they think it's such a daunting task because they keep hearing that it has to be like 250 pages, and or it has to be, they have to research. And for nonfiction, yes, you do have to research, but just break it up into small pieces. Do 10 pages a day as opposed to as opposed to thinking of it as 250 pages. So, and if you, and books are 6 by 9 or 5.5 by 8.5. So technically, they're not going, so if you're writing 10 pages, they're really half pages because you're only doing half a book. So that's the first thing that I tell almost everybody. The second thing that I think a lot of new writers don't think about is having a professional editor and a professional cover designer. They seem to think that if they can get away with doing it all themselves, but if you don't have someone else look at your work or at least read it yourself out loud, you're going to miss a lot. And that's where a professional editor can come in and see if you're going in the wrong direction or see if you missed something or find the awkwardness in certain sentences that aren't usually there. I mean, that you don't usually see yourself if you're a writer. And the book cover designer, people do buy books by their cover, even though the saying says don't judge a book by its cover. People actually do judge a book by its cover. So if you don't have a professional book cover designer, it's also not going to be effective as to sell it. And then the third thing is just have fun. So many writers today are so intense, and it's supposed to be enjoying. I mean, you're supposed to enjoy what you're doing. So if you want to be a writer, have fun with it, and don't and let your creativity flow. Don't get bogged down by, well, this has to be in there or it has to have a certain number of pages, or don't, just enjoy it.
Where would you like to see your writing go in the future? Would you like to maybe have create more books in different genres, maybe have some of your books be adapted into screenplay? What's kind of some future projects or future goals that you have for your
Well,
writing
as
career?
I already said, I'm trying to get out number 5 in time for the anniversary because I know that would be a good marketing tool for me. I'm also I have a children's series which is based on my son who has he has ADHD. The character has hyperactive magical malady. He's a 9-year-old wizard. And the first one is Notorious Nick and the Terrifying Tornado. And that one's already out. It's in an electronic form. The second one, which I'm trying to also get out in time for July 4th, actually, I'm trying to get it out in June, and it's almost done. That one is Notorious Nick and the Devastating Hurricane, because June starts hurricane season. Um, but in long term, what I would like is, yes, I would like to actually, at least from my first book, I would like to either have a movie or write a play because it's a very visual book, and I think it would make a play or a movie very easily. I want to also put all of my books as audiobooks, and at the moment I'm just now researching the process of how to get that done because I don't really know how to do that. And I also know that people who are getting older like audiobooks because they don't have to worry about their eyesight, or people who are young and exercising, like they want to run and they want to listen to a book while they're running or doing some kind of exercising. So I know it's a bigger market, and so I want to do. So that's the other long-term goal, is to get all my books in an audio form. Right now they're in electronic form or print form. And the children's books are only in electronic form because one, I would need to make them get an illustrator for them, and two, because I was kind of hoping with ADHD being such a big market that I could get a publisher that would see the big market for it and do it. So those may end up being in print form later. I may just bite the bullet and do it myself anyway. But so those are my long-term and short-term goals for my books.
Well, Louise, I appreciate you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on the podcast today to share your books and your journey in writing. For my listeners interested in reading your work and would like to support you in the future, where can they go to learn more information and where can they go to connect with you as well?
Well, my Amazon page is amazon.com/author/Louise Harris. And then you can also go to my business website, lastresearchandediting.com, if they're interested in either the editing or if they just want to read more about me, then they can go to that. I'm also on Facebook, LinkedIn. I have a Google business profile, and I'm on Alignable, but I really don't like Alignable. And I'm on, and they can probably find me if they search my name. But my website and Amazon are probably the best places.
And I will put all this information in the description box below. So feel free to check her out. Her website, social will be down there for you guys to check out as well. So feel free to check those out. You can also find me on the socials as well. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Southern.Reads. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcast. And as always, feel free to just check the podcast out wherever you get your podcasts from. You can find all that information on my website as well, noahspodcast.com. Go there to find links to my socials and where the podcast is available. Feel free to also subscribe to the podcast if you would like to get notified of when episodes like this come out in the future. I appreciate everyone for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I will see you in the next episode of Southern Reads.